All right, good morning, everybody. Calling the November 14th, 2025 Public Committee meeting. The public comment related to agenda items 2 and 3, they'll be taken before the committee votes on those items, and all other comments will be taken then. So we'll start with our first action item. We have the approval of the minutes for October.
I was not here, so.
Oh, so no, yeah, so no.
And I will second. And all in favor? Okay, minutes are approved, thank you. And then we'll move on to our second item of business, which is the recommendation for adoption of the traffic calming and safety policy.
I will move to recommend to full council the adoption of the traffic calming law.
Second.
Okay, great, thank you. Discussion. So the revised traffic calming and safety policy is in the packet. And just as a brief overview, this is really a formalized policy that, based on the process that Chief String had started to develop in his role as Director of Public Health and Safety. And our committee started working on this about 6 months ago, and it's been really a collaborative effort of everyone providing their input, and everyone who was involved in that. And so in September, the draft policy was sent over to Montgomery County Planning Commission and the traffic engineer, the fire company for review, and we got that feedback. And since then, we've incorporated those changes. And so those changes are in this version of the policy in the packet. And just to summarize those changes, they were really just mostly minor text changes. We did add a definition section as advised by our engineer. And then there were some eligibility requirements that were suggested by our engineer. We actually decided not to include those just because we thought those might just be that our greater goal was to evaluate each request that comes in and not create a barrier, an additional barrier to evaluate them. And there was also a suggestion for implementation of block consensus. We also decided not to add this as a requirement, just because the feedback from the committee was that, again, the same thing, that we didn't want to create. So I just wanted to talk about one thing that was changed in this version of the draft. I did broaden the eligible groups to include not just residents and schools, but also institutions such as houses of worship, child care centers, senior living centers. So instead of saying school representative, I put institutional representative. So the definition for institutional representative now reads, institutional representatives shall mean a designated individual authorized to act on behalf of an institution, such as a school, child care center, house of worship, nonprofit organization, senior living facility, or government entity located within or adjacent to the affected area. The institutional representative may be an administrator, facility manager, or other official empowered to provide input or make requests under this policy. So I just wanted to get consensus on that.
Yeah, smart.
Okay.
Jean, if I can just make a recommendation, we might just want to add in the list of, you say school, childcare center, house of worship, nonprofit organization, senior living facility, or government entity. We could say government entity or similar institution to just provide a little bit more flexibility in case there's something else that we would deem that would fall under that definition, but that wouldn't necessarily, I don't know that there would be.
I thought
Like
that
a
the
nonprofit.
such as sort of covered that, because the definition is actually act on behalf of an institution.
Such as?
A. So I thought that gave it enough.
Could be a medical facility, could
Right,
be,
right.
you know, could be a lot of different things.
Well, if our attorney
Okay,
feels that that
Yeah, I mean,
covers,
I was thinking the same thing, but I thought the such as sort of covered that.
that's fine then, yeah.
I guess the only other thing, you know, we said nonprofit organization, but it could be one of our commercial. Like it almost sounds like we explicitly are excluding by
so
only
that is
saying
different
nonprofit.
category, business owners are.
Oh, okay. Oh, right, there's the
Yeah.
separate, you're right, so we have that covered nonetheless.
Should we say including but not limited to instead of such as?
Yeah. Maybe that's better.
Okay. Okay, sorry. Sorry, I will make the agenda. I thought I had it. So we have, so if there's no other changes on that, we can open that up to public comment. This is for the traffic calming policy. Is there any public comment in the room for the traffic calming policy?
Can't comment, so we're gonna see. Hi, I'm Joe Stratton, 402 Dudley. Want to just commend the committee for all the hard work on this. I think it's great. The output is really great, and I think will have an important effect. One of the things that was unclear to me, in the section on decision making review. In the process, there's a step 1, education request, step 2, review and evaluate. Then it goes to step 4, decision making.
We skipped step 3.
Okay.
There's a statement about in step 2, based on the nature of the request, speed, volume, and crash data may be collected. It's unclear how the crash data, for example, will be evaluated. I don't know if that needs to be specified in it. I'm not suggesting it does, but as a reader, it was unclear to me, you know, we're collecting crash data, and it will be evaluated, but what do we do? How do we evaluate it? It's not specified. Don't know if it needs to be, I just wanted to point that out. And again, great work. Thank you.
Chief Strang, do you want to comment on that?
I don't know if we want to go into great detail on this. So realistically, just from an operational perspective, it's going to be evaluated. You know, do we have a single car crash, which generally wouldn't be a traffic calming issue, you know, unless speed's an issue. Do we have a deer versus car? If it's a pedestrian issue, then obviously we have higher concern. So we're going to look at it from that perspective of realistically, we have 5 crashes, but what are they? If we have 5 pedestrian crashes, we have a high concern. If we have 5 car versus deer crashes, well, we're not controlling the population. So, you know, without getting into, I don't know that we can actually apply a logic model to kind of really sift out what we're looking for, but it's from the perspective of, is there a problem? What is that problem? And how high the concerns are.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any public comments online? No. Okay. All right, so then we'll take a vote on this.
I just want to say thanks, Jane.
Yeah,
I mean, you
seriously,
have
Jane.
worked so hard on this
Yeah.
policy.
I'm happy to.
And,
And I'm really proud that, because I feel like this really has been talked about for so many years, even before my time on council.
yeah,
So I'm really proud this committee came together to get this done, and I appreciate all of your.
Yeah,
input.
and all the input from
Yeah, yeah.
everybody.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's so important that we now have a document that somebody walks in the door to Maggie and, wants to know why they have a stop sign, we don't have a stop sign, or they have a speed bump, we don't have a speed bump. And we now have objective criteria, processes laid out so that people, the public, know what they have to do if they have a concern and how to do it. I just
Absolutely.
think this is such a great paradigm for
Yeah.
Yeah,
everything we do, right?
Yeah.
Like just having a toolkit
Yeah.
and waste disposal. The rules are clear.
And to underscore yet again, how lucky are we as a community that parking and traffic is our number one issue and complaint? Like, talk about a privileged community.
You know, I just realized where I got kind of messed up. I did mean to talk about the toolkit recommendations, and I know we had asked Jeff Eldon to kind of look at that and just check the feasibility of those toolkit items. So I'm sorry. I missed that.
That's the magic word.
That's what I forgot. So Jeff, do you have any like input on the toolkit as it's written in the policy right now?
No, and I was able to speak with some towns that have their stamped asphalt, for crosswalks, and they didn't really see an increase in upkeep and maintenance with that. So I agree with what's in there.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. Okay, all right. I think we're ready to vote then. All in favor? Great. Motion passes. This will be moved to finance and administration after this. And then it will go to full council for consideration. And then after that, I guess we'll develop, I'm working on the website text so that we can have a traffic calming webpage so that all of that communication will be clear on that. And then I know String wanted to also provide the traffic data on that page as well, so that we can compile that and post that to the site.
Yep, so we'll start generating that web page. Everything will live there. We'll start communicating that. So once that is up and available, we'll have our website and social media communication, newsletter communication to the public that it's available. We also are coming up with a fillable petition form just to kind of create that for people so that they have that available. They don't have to think of how to make that for themselves. So we'll have all the resources available for people to download from the website to either make a petition, request a review, have access to the data, and then the policy itself. So we'll go ahead and start building that out and launch it as soon as everything is available.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll move on to the next agenda item then, which is the providing a recommendation for the Price Avenue Striking Pilot Program. I'll turn this over to Maggie if that's okay, in terms of where we're at.
Sure. So if you recall, we initiated this program a couple of months ago, back in June, wasn't it? So Public Works went out and implemented the temporary striping for our engineers' recommendations. And then we've just been collecting feedback from residents ever since. So we've compiled all of that and we shared that with the committee. So you've seen kind of the feedback. It's gone both ways. Some people have found it beneficial. Some people have found it less beneficial, and some people kind of end up in the middle. You restrict parking in some places, and then it kind of shows pressures in other places. So on the whole, I think it's been more or less positive. But at this point, the decision point that we need to make is whether or not we want to either continue the pilot, make any changes to the pilot, either add or remove parking restrictions, or if we are satisfied with the conditions of it, to make it permanent. And then if that's the case, Public Works will go out and use the thermoplast as opposed to the temporary striping. If we decide to remove it, then we'll scrub it and restripe as recommended by the committee.
Okay. And everyone has had a chance to look at the feedback collected from the residents. The audience.
Seemed like there was an initial negative feedback at the very beginning, but the trend is definitely into the positive. Obviously, some residents want even more in addition to the striping. I don't know that we have to address that right today. It's really just a question whether we keep the striping permanent or not. One thing that sort of struck me was the question of could we try to have some targeted enforcement for illegal parking on the block to help a lot of the concern was, the loss of parking spaces, and it seemed like at least there's a perception that there are people parking there without permits. So I think if we adopt this, we should also ask the chief to
Well,
should do some targeted enforcement over the next couple of weeks to see if that also helps.
Can I interject before you respond, John? Because I just spoke yesterday to Danielle, the manager at Montgomery Court, to get her parking data. Which, to your point, speaks to the issue on that and surrounding area, which actually speaks to every manager's point is like, anytime you do something with one street or traffic, you have to look at the spillover and how it affects other places. Montgomery Court Apartments has about 150 apartments and 71 parking spaces. All are used except for 5. And she said that's not because people don't have cars, but because it's $165 a month to pay to park there. And people park on the street on Narberth and Price. And she estimated that 90% of those 150 apartment units have cars. So it is to no surprise to me that Price and Narberth are seeing the congestion of the parking of people who are not home residents, but rather the apartment residents. So anyway, to the point of enforcement, because apartment dwellers can't get permits.
People that are living on the non-restricted side can't get a permit. So
Right.
anybody on the south side of Price can't get a permit.
Right.
So enforcement, there's 2 issues that we've heard from residents. One being the permit issue. And talking to some of the residents, we found that people are still looking for the permit on the car, the old sticker. And people are saying, was there a sticker on the car? And, we've had to explain that, somebody can have a permit and it's in the system, you're never going to see anything. So that is part of it. There are some violations which have been ticketed. Prior to Paul's departure, he was focused up there 3 days a week,
Oh, all right.
and we weren't seeing the violations that were being reported. Like I said, there were some, but I think it was generally this perception of the cars don't have stickers. The other issue that we're seeing is encroachment on the lines. Currently, the lines are there for guidance, and I was just talking to Jeff about it. If council were to approve this, we're going to have to do no parking between signs so that officially we can enforce that. So we had a couple residents call, we've been able to persuade people to abide by the lines, but we couldn't officially cite them for that because it isn't a violation at this time.
Okay.
thank you.
Okay. That's
Can
useful.
I announce?
Right.
Yeah, we're having a new parking controller starting Monday.
Okay.
So we'll be back in business, with,
I gotta start feeding them here.
yes. Just, giving people a heads up, new enforcement person is starting Monday.
I do have some thoughts on this. It seems like based on the feedback that we received, it was kind of unanimous that those pull-off areas by Essex and Price, they work really well, and everyone has reported that they use it and it functions well. Also, the pull-off area by the 2 driveways at Montgomery Court, that seems to be functioning well. Well, there's a lot of mixed mixed feedback about the driveway triangles. Some people say all of the neighbors should get it. Some people say it causes more parking issues for other neighbors who don't have it, or it just, I know I talked to another neighbor who lives there and who doesn't have the triangles, and basically it sometimes forces people to block her driveway because it pushes the cars over. So I think there's some mixed feedback there about those driveway triangles. I did, and she also mentioned that Philadelphia does something where you can apply for a permit to paint your own X box in front of your driveway, and it doesn't cost anything, but the owner paints it themselves, and they are provided the design guidelines for that. I'm just wondering if there's a better way to do the drive, because for one thing, it wouldn't be fair to say some people get them and some people don't. And on the other hand, it's also not really realistic to give everyone driveway triangles because, yeah, sure, it's an improvement for that individual homeowner who has a driveway, but does it really improve things for everyone else? So that's my only concern. So I'm wondering if we can just pilot something else for those driveway triangles. I don't think they're like a definite plus to have. It does cause some other like negative impacts that I'm unsure about.
So wait, I'm hesitant to start another pilot on top of a pilot, but I mean, if someone's blocking your driveway, John, can't you just call the police and they'll come ticket?
They can, where the issue comes in and the triangles afford additional cushion, for clearance and turning and visibility. So what the law is the width of your driveway. So, just extend the lines of your paved area.
Right.
And I think where this comes into the fact, some people may have narrow driveways and the law only affords them that space along the curb to be protected. Somebody has a wider driveway, they get additional cushioning there. So yes, to your point, but then we do have people that will, either unintentionally or maybe try to add an extra car onto the block or something, will come all the way up to that theoretical line.
Yeah.
So if we were to create something where they can put an X at the end of the driveway, we need to make sure that they're not giving themselves a cushion,
Right.
Because that wouldn't be enforceable technically, again, back to the
Right,
issue.
it would need to be signed off on, or I don't know if it makes more sense if it's easier from an administrative point of view to just have to paint it, have Public Works paint it, and then have them cover a permit fee or something. Or the request basis.
Yeah, I mean, we would need to think about that administratively because I agree. I think that there would be some variations in how those would be painted by homeowners.
Right.
So it would be more consistent if we were to have Public Works do it, but that's additional time and materials. And then at that point, I don't know if we'd be looking just at Price Avenue because I suspect that a lot of people throughout the borough may be interested in having these X's in front of their driveway. So now we're talking about a significant, because it's not just painting it one time.
Right.
It's we have to go back and repaint it continuously. And the permit fee is not going to cover the long-term cost of that. So I would hesitate to open that up as a treatment that we would offer for driveways, just because I have concerns about an inconsistent application by individual homeowners. And if we were to have Public Works do it, it represents a significant staff and material cost for long-term maintenance.
Yeah, I don't know what the solution is. I do feel like
We could have the suggestion where people do it themselves with guidelines. And then complaint driven, if it's painted beyond the driveway, if there's a complaint, we could have, zoning or someone go out and take a look at it and go, this doesn't apply.
Oh, God.
And,
Okay.
but
That's a little laborious.
only complaint driven. Just so it wouldn't have the painting or the repainting. If another neighbor complains, you see if it does.
Let me ask a practical question. Do we know how many folks don't have the triangles that think that they should have I mean, are we talking one or two driveways? I just don't want to, like, my overall impression is that this pilot worked pretty well overall. And I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? So it may be, so, if we're talking one or two driveways, like that's one issue. If it's like half the block.
Like
I
maybe
didn't get
that's
that
solve a
sense.
problem we don't have.
Right, well, I
Massive
didn't get the
problem.
sense from the emails and the input that it was more than one or two people.
Agreed. And I have to think, Jeff, I don't want to speak for you, but you're probably not as excited about the neighbors painting the street. Yeah, I have to tell you, I think that's a really bad idea. And, people have figured it out thus far with the driveway. I feel like, again, identify if there's a couple on the street that we keep at the triangles, and then if it's a perennial problem, then they could work with John on a car blocking the driveway, but.
maybe it's a design issue then with the triangles. Could we adjust the design so that it doesn't quite extend so far? Because they're not functioning as pull-off areas. they're just functioning as to give additional sightline. So,
That's what people want. I mean, that's part of the reason we did it.
Yeah.
We gave the
yeah,
sightlines,
I
right?
get
I
that.
mean, that was the
Yeah.
initial intent was people were
Yeah.
having a hard time getting out of their
Right.
driveway.
but I wonder if maybe just a slightly more narrow box with an X on it might be more effective in terms of preventing people from, number one, encroaching on that space and not following the line, and also creating a little bit more space for other vehicles, right?
So I'm sure that can be done, but I think it doesn't eliminate the issue of, on rough count, there's like 8 driveways on the block, like how many people want that? And then are we creating this expectation that we're gonna do it everywhere? I'm raw guessing, just Google Maps, some driveways are probably like barely 8 feet, and there's one that's a shared driveway that's probably 12 feet, just counting the blocks. So, I mean, I think that becomes an issue where, the 12-foot driveway probably isn't gonna need it
Right.
because the apron's so wide, but like this tiny driveway. And ironically, there's a car parked right up on the edge there too, where I can see that being an issue.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. I guess, so the options are to either just move to vote on this as striped and then make it permanent. And then, or alternatively, adjust the design and just maybe do a pilot for that portion of it. So we can make the rest of it permanent. Does that make sense in terms of that?
Yeah, I think if you wanted to explore this driveway striping option, we would want to get the input of our traffic engineer as to what would be kind of recommended and permissible. I think, based on my reading of the feedback and to Mike's comments, the pull-off areas, and you were commenting as well, the pull-off areas by the intersection at Essex seem to be well received. In terms though of the driveway, I think we would want to hear from our traffic engineer a little bit more before we move on that. So if you want to, we could just extend the pilot for another month until we have that feedback, and then we can come to a decision next month. Or if you wanted to go ahead and just decide on the making the pull-off areas permanent now, and then we take away or leave the driveway triangles for the time being, and then phase it that way until we get more feedback, and then we can kind of decide on the second half of it next month. So-
I have a preference either way.
I would stay focused on what we're doing here, and I think probably, again, make it the pull-offs permanent. The driveways, to your point, we're talking maybe 2-3 people driveways who have come forward. I would suggest we stay focused on this, because I think with the new traffic coming, we're gonna get a lot of issues in Broad. So again, if we're only talking about 1 or 2 households, I would really say we kind of close this pilot out. We can reassess if there's a critical mass of folks that have driveway issue.
I guess we have some folks out there. I'd be interested. I don't know if the public comment potentially could address this specific issue, so
Tom,
I'd like
you're here for price?
I'd like to hear that, so.
Are you for a price driveway?
I live on Conway,
Oh,
and I do have comment.
Okay.
Okay.
Not
not on price, okay.
on price, so put it in on that. I just want to make sure that if somebody's
Yeah.
here to talk about that,
I'm here to talk about price.
okay.
So
Let's hear
if,
it. Yeah,
when I close the discussion, I can open it up. to public.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Well, thanks. Hi, Joe Stratton, 402 Dudley. So I live on the corner of Dudley and Price, and I use Price Avenue, that 200 block, for driving, bicycling, walking, so I'm very familiar with it. 2 comments. I think the striping at the southeast corner of Price and Essex has been tremendous in improving flow through Price, because it gives people who are making a right turn off of Essex going east on Price, gives them a place to turn off. So that, I think, has been tremendously helpful. Regarding the striping, the driveways, really important conversation. As I think about it, I thought the driveway striping was to provide areas for cars to pull off a little bit off of Price. So if I'm coming west on Price, it gives me a place to pull off on the north side for cars that are coming east on Price. And if that is the case, my thought is it may be most helpful to think from a traffic engineering standpoint about where are the best places, where are the best driveways to stripe to allow that pull off. If we try to meet, my hesitation about meeting individual needs is, just as you were talking about, it may extend to other blocks, and where do we start, where do we stop with that? But, thinking about the driveway striping, if the purpose is to create some, temporary pull-offs, so people can pull off on the north side of the street when a car is coming on the south side of the street going east, I think that's a great philosophy to repeat. Thanks.
We're looking at what, 3 driveways or 1 Google Maps here. I just would be cautious, like Iona is gonna be next, like you're gonna probably then open this up to the entire borough, so we should talk about capacity.
Well, also, to your point, if this is a request that comes in throughout the borough, then we should kind of be thoughtful about how it gets implemented. And if it causes issues for other neighbors, then that's an issue. So I do feel that we should kind of figure that out first before we move forward on the triangles for the driveways. That's how I feel on that. So I don't know procedurally.
I just want to be clear. So the issue isn't, I think there's sort of 2 different issues percolating here. One is that by having the triangles, we're potentially cutting out some extra spaces by broadening that. I'm not sure that that's right just because of the pattern of parking, right? Like, even if you narrowed it, I don't know that you're going to pick up an extra space because you get to the next driveway, right? So I know
in one case it actually does.
It does? Okay. Because I have.
It depends on the size of the car.
Right.
It's only 3. I think we are so in the weeds on this. I honestly would defer to Jeff here and John. Like, we're really, I mean, we did the pilot for the pull-offs.
Right.
I think that's question 1. That seems to be successful.
Right, that's,
So we should make
I
that
don't think we're
permanent.
touching that.
Right, okay, so that's it. The next with the driveways, again, I feel like we are making a tremendous decision that would affect the borough, that the 3 of us are in the weeds on, that I would just defer to Jeff and John. Like, if this is a major issue, we should address it. If not, I say we stay focused on the pull-off and reevaluate if it becomes a concern of yours and the community. Not to put you on the spot. But that's the direction I would go.
To Joe's point, I think the initial plan was to create a pull-off area, and from the public feedback, doesn't seem like it's being used. I think inherently, the places where we're gonna have visibility problems, we have a parking issue where parking volume is excessive. Like if you go to another block where there isn't a parking issue, visibility isn't an issue either. So if we try to tackle the visibility issue, we are going to cause or increase the parking problem that already exists there. So I think we just be mindful of that. Like, if we start going down that road, we're creating future problems. So to the point of this whole thing was traffic calming and all this, maybe we don't go forward with the striping for the driveways at this point. It doesn't seem like it's being used based on what the residents are saying.
Okay, so just, we're talking about the corners, right?
No, it's
No, the
driveways.
No, but we would recommend that we adopt the extent.
The sight line.
For
The
the site.
pullover. I'm sorry, the
Pull
pullover.
off
Yeah,
areas
yeah,
by
right.
Montgomery,
Yeah.
the 2 driveways, and then by Price and Essex. So those 2.
And then just eliminate the striping on the street.
Well, I
So-
think we're reevaluating, right, in terms of what to do there? Or are you suggesting that we don't move forward?
My hesitation comes with setting an expectation that now this becomes the solution for our parking concerns, because that's really what we're tackling here. It's, over density of parking is causing us sightline problems for our residents. So, pushing that out a little bit more would solve the sightline issue, but it exacerbates the parking issue. So I don't know. I think maybe holding off on this, or maybe trying to come up with a different option. Maybe it is, I see that there's old markings on there that at some point that we had put down because the thermoplast for driveway, it wasn't the padding, it wasn't the triangle, but it was the line. So I don't know if we try to say, hey, if there is an issue with encroachment onto a driveway that we afford that resident, the lines there without the extra padding, maybe that's sufficient. I mean, but then it does come to an issue where some of these driveways are pretty narrow. You know, we're not gonna, do we artificially give them an extra berth but not the other residents? I mean, that is an option. Can we say that, you know, if they haven't taken 12 feet along the curb line, that we will give them a little bit more room?
So maybe it's a specific width rather than.
That's an option.
Can you have a minimum width?
I think, you know, if council wants to say that, you know, for safety issues, not if we bring a traffic engineer on this to get, you know, some sort of professional opinion on it versus me just pulling numbers out. But if we say, hey, every resident should be afforded at least 10 feet on the curb if they have a driveway, and there's people that might be, you know, smaller.
So I'm gonna suggest that we vote on moving forward with the striping plan for the two pull-off areas. And then reevaluate the striping for the driveway, individual driveways.
So just to clarify what you mean by the two pull-off areas. So we have I'm sorry, I know this isn't going to be on the screen, but this was the original plan. So we have at the corner of Essex and Price, we have on the north side, the triangle for no parking here to corner. On the south side, we have the extended no parking, the striped no parking here to corner. And then for the other pull-off area, you're referring to the two driveway.
Correct.
So these are the two driveway triangles on the south side, bracketing the driveway entrance to Montgomery Court and the, what's this development called? Narberth Place. So just for our audience members. Good, okay, all right. And then are you suggesting that we then remove the driveway triangles, the temporary driveway triangles that we painted on the north side? So there's 4 triangles currently painted as part of the pilot on the north side. Are we suggesting then that those go away?
I'm suggesting that we maybe go back to our engineer and for another design that doesn't take up as much width of the driveway. I think that's what she's doing with the reason.
I'm looking back at it's the same one you have, the bullet scale map. Yeah, it says that the parking data, existing parking before the triangle, well, before all this was 29 spaces, proposed after the common was 23 spaces. So we lost 6. So maybe we go back with the intention of saying, hey, how do we minimize the impact on parking? And see what solutions they have.
Okay.
Because obviously they're the pros of this.
Okay, so the question is, so if we're going back to the engineer, again, the question is, I just want to make sure that it's clear what the recommendation is. We can either leave the temporary until we consult with the engineer and come up with something in the alternative.
If there is.
If there is something else, knowing that the end solution might just be to remove them altogether. Or do we want to leave the temporary striping?
To wait 1 month.
I would leave it for now.
Leave it for now.
Take it out.
And then, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would suspect Tony, who did this, Tony? Whatever.
Yeah.
The engineer knows there's a massive parking issue on that street. I suspect the lengths are required. And there's probably not going to be a way to reduce that to gain more parking. And John, I actually took this note down. Overdensity parking is creating sightline issues for residents. I mean, that's the fundamental issue, right? Is that we have in some areas.
Yes.
I mean, I talked to the apartment owner, we're talking about folks that are using the street parking, and then we have overdensity parking. So looking at the root causing all these issues is gonna be the problem. Like, we're debating, you know, a couple feet on the side of the driveway. I would just encourage us to look at what you so simply stated is overdensity of parking. But yeah, say, look, maybe they can shave off a couple feet, and instead of losing 6 parking spots, we'll lose 4.
Well, we'll take this information back to them and see what they would recommend for next month.
Okay, so we have to move on, so,
So we're going to go to table.
yeah, so we'll go to table this until next month.
Okay,
All in favor of tabling? Okay. Okay, then. Discussion items,
Can I make my comment though?
oh, I'm sorry. Public comment for.
Yeah,
for
Tom
price.
Henry, I live on Conway. It seems to me that what you have right now on price is excessive considering parking problems. The extended no parking at the corner seems excessive. How many times do you have 4 or 5 cars trying to make that turn on the price, backed up, trying to get that price? I think you eliminated at least three parking spaces there by extending it that long. Having it would probably work just as well as what you have now. So my observation there is that's excessive. That's just doesn't seem like a good balance between cars trying to go down the driveway, down the road, and the number of cars that have to park on that street. As far as the driveways are concerned, that's excessive as well. Example, the driveway where they put the planters out in the street. Right across the street from them are those 2 large driveways to the apartments and the condos. If they can't get their car in and out of their driveway without that little triangle, then they should probably leave it in the driveway and take a cab, because that is excessive to put those triangles there. As far as pool offs are concerned, you do have those double driveways at the apartments and the condos. So there is a pool off area already in that area where no one can park, even with those little triangles that you've added already as the trial. So I think, in my mind, you haven't really balanced well in the trial. And that was just a trial. Parking needs and traffic safety and traffic needs for that particular street. Almost any street in this town, you're going to have pull-off problems or cars going beside each other, different direction. With Conway, for instance, with that bump out you put in there, that makes it extremely difficult to get up and down the road. Every street you have a problem, just like you have on Price. So it seems that what happens in Narberth, what you do is either increase the number of cars or decrease the number of parking spaces, or both. And I think you need to do a better balance between parking needs and the drivers. That's my observation. I just don't think, I use Price a lot. I don't think there's a good balance there right now with this trial. And unfortunately, I had to leave. I want to make one quick comment not related to this. I talked to Jeff about this a week or so ago. It's these fill in the blank bump outs you put in, particularly the one that sits almost in the middle of the road on Conway at Stewart. That's dangerous. Even with the delineators on there at night, it's dangerous. The curb, the color of the curb matches almost the color of the road, and it's really difficult to see, and it's confusing even with those delineators there. I suggested to Jeff, paint them yellow, make them stand out a little bit better, make them a little more safe, so that drivers that aren't familiar with the town, aren't familiar with these fill in the blank bump outs, won't get confused. I came home one night, 2 o'clock in the morning from the hospital, one car parked on Conway, and I knew the bump out was there. I almost ran into it because I couldn't see it. So my suggestion is paint them yellow, or paint them some color that stands out so people who aren't familiar with it at night can actually see these things that are sticking out in the middle of the road. I mentioned it to Jeff when he was over there looking at the plantings, and I just think they're dangerous. Even the one coming around the corner on Conway is dangerous, if you're not familiar with it. I'm sorry, I need to get to the hospital to see my girlfriend. I just wanted to make that comment before I left. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you later.
Any other public comment related to the Price Avenue striking? I'm sorry. No, do you know?
Nice name.
Tom
Yeah, Tom.
lives on Conway.
What's the last name, Joe?
Henry.
Henry,
Okay.
lives in the corner of Conway Street.
Okay, well, we'll do another vote. Yes, all in favor of tabling. Great. Moving on to the discussion item parking policy, turn it over to you.
Yeah, so in light of time, I just want to give a brief update of some of the parking policy updates that Chief and I have recently discussed to make next year. So I just want to kind of provide a brief summary of what we're thinking and get your initial feedback on it. We have been hearing from some businesses and employees with concerns about parking because the upper lot at the municipal lot on Haverford has now been restricted for the new apartments at the Little Gym property. The Citizens Bank parking lot here that had been kind of free and open has also now been restricted to allow any outside parking, and those are privately owned lots. So that is within the right of the property owner to restrict those parking areas. So with that in mind, we're starting to see a bit more of a crunch. So folks who have had kind of some flexibility in where they have been parking are now a little bit more limited. To reflect those concerns and to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our businesses and our employees, I would like to propose that we create a monthly permit, like a long-term parking permit that businesses and employees can apply for to park in the municipal lot on Haverford. We'll keep it a very low rate, so we're proposing $10 a month. And then we would reserve a set number of those parking spaces. So I believe that there's 37 parking spaces in total back there, excluding the 14 in the upper lot. They are all metered parking spaces, but what we're proposing is to create a new monthly parking permit for businesses, business owners, and employees. So you would have to verify that you're a business owner or employee, and then you'd be eligible for that parking spot. And then it would be a monthly permit. So then you would just apply on a monthly basis. We could also, similarly to how we do long-term parking permits up at Sabine, we can offer 1 month and 3 month parking permits. So that's the first change that we're proposing. And then when we're doing enforcement, they would be allowed to park in any of the metered parking spaces. So we wouldn't have reserved parking spaces. So then folks who want to come and park in the metered parking spaces and just pay the meter fee can do so. So we're not going to restrict, like, you have to park here if you have a long-term parking permit. So they can park wherever, and then everything will open up for metered. So when those employees and business owners are not parked there, then they're available for public parking. That's the first change. The second change is in our ordinance and in our resolution that further defines the ordinance. We don't have many rules or regulations about what it means to have a long-term parking permit in any of the municipal lots. So currently we do offer long-term parking at Sabine, and now we're proposing this new business and employee parking permit at the Haverford lot. We have had some complaints about the activities of people who have parking permits up at Sabine. We don't have many rules or regulations that define what that looks like. So I'm proposing that we draft those rules and regulations to say, these are the expectations. Like, if you get a parking permit, here are the things that you're beholden to. And in part, that's to address some of this kind of outside external storage that has been going on up at the Sabine lot. Folks have been storing materials not inside vehicles. We have some landscapers up there. So we're proposing to draft something that would be more clear, that we can enforce more routinely for those lots up there. The other option that we could consider, and Chief and I talked about this, I don't think we came to a decision, so this is kind of what I'm proposing to you, is do we want to restrict our parking permits at Sabine to residents only? Because currently we have commercial businesses who rent those parking spaces. It is $100 a month for those parking permits. We do have about 5 currently, so it represents, what did we figure?
That's just
$6,000 a year in revenues.
We have 5 spaces, or we have 5 people renting?
We have 5 people renting parking spaces.
Are the commercial folks also resident?
I don't believe they all are now.
Okay.
And the vast majority, 3/4 of the permits throughout the last 18 months have been non-residents. So I will say the recurring ones are all non-residents. We have residents that apply for a month or 2 or for whatever reason.
Are you suggesting, I just want to get clarification, that the business owners and employees can park at any of the permit, but they can park at any of the meters if we're just behind
just in the lot behind Haverford.
Okay, because you don't want them parking on the main
Right.
street.
Right.
That affects everybody.
Correct,
Which,
correct.
Andrea, to your point, I do have concern, I mean, I'm always concerned when we kind of craft a new policy for a complaint of one or two. And I think this issue was after a business, somebody received a ticket in the back. You know, we're making a policy decision that could affect every business in downtown. So every business is gonna, of course, they're gonna take that permit for $10 a month. Know that lot's underutilized, but let's hope we get stores in there soon and it is utilized. So like, we're making a decision that could fill a lot that could affect your company, like your business or something else.
Everybody on the.
Sorry, I'm sorry. There was a caveat to that
Okay.
we had also talked about limiting it to 15. So we have 37 parking spaces, offering up to 15 for like 15, first come, first serve.
I would actually think, you know what, the rules are the rules. I mean, I know that we've kind of briefly talked about this, but you're making decisions to a privileged 15 business owners that potentially affects the customers that are gonna go pick up cheese and dog food and a book.
Everybody, yeah. Yeah.
Well, the question is, where are they parking now?
So I think if we get a little creative, there may be other ways of addressing the same issue. Just off the top of my head, maybe a permit that's a day permit that allows them to park on surrounding streets between certain hours. They can pay for it, and that allows, because there is plenty of parking on surrounding neighborhood streets that the customers don't want to use because, you know, God forbid, you should walk a block to get to, you know, where you need to do. I think there are other creative solutions that maybe we have a specialized business permit. And you can park between these hours on 2-hour blocks within a couple blocks of the downtown.
Mhm.
I like
And I think that might be a more, a better solution in that it doesn't affect all the businesses. There's plenty of parking on these blocks. Daytime is when people usually go to work and aren't parking as often, so there's more parking around there. I think that might be a more workable solution that doesn't affect everybody in the downtown.
Agreed. I mean, to your point, you could drive down here and
Yeah.
park for free. Like, not many people.
Although it's amazing,
That's
like
part
these
of it.
spots
They do their part.
I've noticed that these additional spots that we've added are
Yeah,
often
They're used. They're well
completely vacant,
utilized.
which is great. And even my wife commented yesterday, we were driving down, she's like, you know, these spots just gratuitously offered. These spots really slow down the
They do.
traffic on
They do.
Haverford because they make you
yeah,
do
Yeah.
this. And it's really been effective.
yeah.
It was.
I would just say, Cindy, I'd be sort of curious to know. My impression is that lot look, it doesn't have to be once the construction starts, obviously things change, things are gonna move in there. But I think that lot is terribly underutilized, is my impression.
Which
And
one?
The one behind Haverford right now.
Oh,
There's
no
tons of it.
There's no,
Right,
there's no.
so right now, it's kind of a wasted asset, why not take advantage of it on a temporary basis?
Because I guess, so like 15 lucky business members get it? That feels unfair too.
I mean, it's fine as long as it's underutilized, but you're also setting up expectations that it's really easy to give
Well,
something
that-
and then take it away.
Well, that's what my point is, we
Correct.
have to match the expectations,
Yeah,
to say,
Yeah,
we will do this on a temporary basis for now, while there's no new construction over here.
but I think we do have
And
to
we
think
do it by a
long-term
lottery.
solutions, longer term solutions.
Yeah, but I think right now, this is a totally underutilized asset.
For the moment,
Let's
but
make
you
some
gotta be
money
careful with the expectations.
off of it.
Well, some of that shift, if that development moves forward in terms of the parking allocation.
So the agreement that we have is that of the 37 spots, 23 of them will have to remain open as public parking, and then the balance can be reserved for future tenant use. But that's assuming.
So could we just build in a caveat that until.
Thanks, everyone.
So it's not a permanent solution, but it's a.
Right, and the idea to Mike's point is that we also notice that it's an underutilized lot right now. Folks don't necessarily want to park there Access is a little bit limited. So we were just trying to think of ways that we could, fill the lot, provide a space for parking. We can also change the price. I mean, everything is flexible. But Andrew brings a great point about to provide something and then kind of on a temporary basis. So in the interest of time, may I suggest that we can sit down and kind of talk about this over the next couple of weeks and maybe draft something with Andrea as, both mayor and a business owner representing kind of the business community, and then committee members on coming up with something that we might think is a good workaround for discussion at the next.
And I would definitely want to hear from the business community.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
I don't know that they would love the first 15, that's a type of dynamic that.
Sure.
But
And this is this is me kind of spitballing, like trying to come up. So I appreciate the feedback. So we'll continue working on this.
feel like
I do.
it's so underutilized.
I hear you,
and-
but-
And it will take some cars off of the street.
Okay, but are we-
Someone who works downtown and like having to tell my clients, like, oh, well, there might be a spot, one of our 2 reserved spots there, but otherwise you're gonna have to pay and feed the
Right.
meters for 2 hours. And
But
they
it's-
come and they're like,
I
oh, I
think
have
it's
to
a
park.
potential
walk in.
solution.
It is, but we're setting up the precedent that if you work here, we're gonna help you arrange for your parking. And are we comfortable with
I
that?
think that's a managing
It's
the
also a way of
expectation.
supporting our businesses, I think, because, sometimes they do need to park near their businesses to carry the inventory.
I'm just
or
saying,
whatever it is.
Do we want that precedent?
Right now, I wanna do anything I can to help our.
Oh, that I agree with,
Right?
wholeheartedly.
So
That I
it seems
agree
like
with.
an easy,
That I
I
agree.
Yeah.
think we have to really manage the expectation that this is, we hear you,
Yeah,
this is temporary, we're not making long-term promises.
Yeah.
Eventually we will need these spaces back, but in the meantime, we've
Right.
lost 2 significant.
And it's worth saying, they have been parking back
oh,
there.
for sure, I just wanna keep, and I'd be remiss to say that, John, you said it so well. We're talking about adding more density and taking away parking. What did we spend this entire meeting talking about?
Right.
Density and cars, like, we need to be realistic with, the reality is, we have a parking issue at a downtown that is beloved. So as we talk about, density with apartments and taking away parking, we're looking at the lived experience and reality of this.
I don't think we have a parking issue on Haverford Avenue right now.
Okay, then,
That lot is completely empty.
okay, I'm just saying, this is what we're talking about,
But what's
our
weird-
entire meeting.
What's weird is for whatever reason, people don't pull back. Like I will come down the street and see, like there's not a space on Haverford. And yet I know that if people just went back there, there's 15 spaces.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, people just don't want to go
Okay.
back there.
I do want to move
Yeah.
on.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
the one other change that I wanted just to mention is that we also discussed, so we currently have the option right now for a free daily and a free weekly pass. That is, not that this is widespread, but there is opportunities for people to just not pay for a parking permit and just continue to apply for weekly permits, which has been done. So we're proposing, and also there's no limit on the number of free weekly passes that you can get. So John and I were discussing just applying some limits to that. So eliminating the free daily pass and then putting parameters on the free weekly pass to say you can apply for a free weekly pass for up to 2 consecutive weeks, 4 total weeks during the year. So that would allow for folks who have, if they're going on vacation and they have somebody who's coming to house sit for them, that would allow them to get the weekly pass for either 1 week or 2 weeks consecutive, no more than 2 weeks consecutive, and then no more than 4 total weeks in a year. And then the last thing was also looking at providing a hang tag option for folks providing long-term services to residents. So if you have like an in-home aide, they could apply for a hang tag permit, and we would create a special form for that to allow for that service provider to apply for the hang tag rather than the resident applying for a hang tag and then transferring it back and forth, because like if they don't return it or I don't know. So then that non-resident, so a non-resident hang tag, that would be kind of for service providers, and then you would have to have the resident sign off on it to affirm that that person is in fact providing recurring services to them as an option to create just parking options for folks. So those were the proposals that I wanted to put before you.
So I think do either of you have the 2-hour parking
Yes.
on your street? Do you have a driveway?
It's a shared driveway that's
Okay.
in there.
So kind of. So I have to register, my parents have a handicap spot, so I need them to be able to park on my street. So I will use that free day pass for them. And I gotta tell you, I think if every morning you were waking up and doing the free pass, you get it. Like if you are committed to do it, I have to imagine there's maybe a handful of people that committed. And I kind of feel like people who rob the loop, like, dude, you get that pass. Like, you are so ingenious that every morning you wake up and do that. I don't know that we have to change the entire town's policy for the couple of truly dedicated folks that every day wake up and get that free pass. So I guess you know that number, John, but
When the day pass isn't, I think the week pass is more used.
yeah,
than it
that
is-
makes sense.
Yeah, every Sunday, with Paul's departure, I'm taking notice because I'm taking it now. I can go back and it's 52 weeks where every Sunday they just apply for 2 cars in the household. You know,
Yeah, so that's an easy one. I feel like that's an easy one to manage.
Well, I'll draft up all of my recommendations and then we can discuss them in December and make decisions on it. So we'll have a little bit more time to consider. And then, like I said, I'll work with you guys kind of between now and then to get some firmer recommendations in place, and particularly the business community for the parking on Haverford.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So really quick, we're running out of time. Pedestrian bike accessibility, Mainline Greenway, Lower Marion is planning to implement the Mainline Greenway for the first phase implementation for 2026. So numbers should be planning accordingly to implement this year as well. And then active transportation plan. The steering committee did meet October 29th. Our county planners presented an overview of the plan, and it's been designed as a web experience essentially with 3 main components, with the map and the toolkit and implementation recommendations. And as for the map, it has 3 layers. It has the existing network, and then planned improvements, and then the 3rd layer is the recommended network. So planned improvements includes things that are already in the pipeline that have already started the planning process, and the recommended network are recommendations that have come forward from this active transportation plan planning process and from the survey feedback that was received. So essentially there's 9 intersection improvements within Narberth that are recommended, and 7 are essentially there's crosswalk and ADA improvements, which I believe Jeff has been doing in practice anyway, at any time there's a roadway improvement. And there's 2 others, Wynwood Avenue and Haverford Avenue intersection, which has been identified in the past, and the tunnel intersection at Wynwood and Wynwood. So that also has been identified as an issue. And then it also identifies a bicycle network. So this is in addition to the Mainline Greenway, just to increase that bike connectivity throughout the region. And just a note about budgeting. So the recommended items that in this plan should eventually be added to the CIP. And then once in the CIP, we would update the web map to add those items into the planned improvements map. So it's a continuously updated plan that over time it'll shift from one category to the other. And it also has a toolkit for bike, pedestrian, and traffic calming improvements. And it also has showcasing illustrations for 2 locations within Narberth. One is at Wynwood and Woodside Avenue, and the other is the Haverford Avenue section from Essex Avenue to Wynwood Avenue, showing a bike lane along the one side of that road. And then there are recommendations for implementation to use this map and the toolkit to plan for future improvements. And basically and they also recommend creating a system to update regularly and periodically as these improvements get implemented. So this is really kind of a living, breathing document that will continuously build on over time. And another recommendation is that we establish an active transportation advisory committee along with Laura Marion. So that will help us align our transportation planning. And
Would that be a standalone committee or a joint committee?
it will be a joint committee. And then creating a central data collection and analysis that's shared between Lower Marion Township and Narberth. So this would be crash data, speed data, and making sure that that's a shared data between Lower Marion and Narberth. And the other thing was a TDM policy. We could co-create that with GDF. So they're recommending creating that policy. And if we wanted to move forward with that, we could schedule something with GDF early next year. And then they also recommend a complete street policy. We can talk about that, but I do feel like Jeff has essentially been putting that into practice every time we do a roadway improvement. But it might make sense to do some lightweight version of that because it does help potential grant applications and things like that. And then there are other the recommendation was to adopt the traffic calming policy, which we will be doing. And Lower Marion should update theirs as well. They do have one that's pretty outdated. And then the Montgomery Avenue, any questions on that? Okay. Montgomery Avenue Corridor Safety Action Plan. We had, we're early in the process with that. And council received an internal presentation on November 6th. And the Lower Marion Township Commissioners also received a presentation. So we're just in the last 6 months has been a data collection and analysis phase, collecting crash data, volume data, and that data has informed identifying safety improvements along this corridor. So we discussed 6 potential intersection improvements along the Narberth segment of Montgomery Avenue. And we also discussed road diet evaluation on Montgomery Avenue as well. Eastbound only, westbound only, or full road diet. And that evaluation will be based on things like the projected level of service for that road during peak hours. In terms of a timeline, pretty ambitious timeline that they talked about, but they said a public meeting presenting recommendations in February, and if adopted, we would file, I guess, a cross-municipal Safe Streets for All implementation grant for construction of some selected projects in April. Any questions on that? Okay. Moving on to committee reports. Shade Tree Commission, I did get a update form from Carson. So they have 38 trees that they're planting tomorrow. And 30 people have volunteered, so that'll be happening tomorrow. And we have 22 different property owners that have been with the trees, and they're working with Jeff with the PA1 call as required. And then Environmental Advisory Committee, we're working on the gas powered leaf blower ordinance. So next week, November 19th, Lower Marion is voting on the gas powered leaf blower ordinance. And then staff is working on a Narberth version of that ordinance that would mirror Lower Marion's. And I believe John Walco is reviewing that. And then that will come back to public health and safety next month for review.
Yes.
And recommendation.
Okay.
And then, that will be advertised at the December. And then departmental reports, fire company report is in the packet, any reports on police?
It's in there, nothing that.
Okay, great. And any public comments, from the room? Sure.
Hi, last time, Joe Stratton, 402 Dudley. Two comments. One regarding the parking behind Haverford, the business parking. My understanding is people can already park there. They just need to feed the meters. So I just want, I really respect the thinking about the permits. I'm just concerned, this has been spoken about setting up expectations that might need to change. Really important thinking. One, the discussion item of pedestrian and bike accessibility. As a pedestrian and a cyclist, I'd suggest separating those two because they're different issues. Pedestrians use sidewalks and cross streets, cyclists use streets. And I think it might just help clarify how we approach these if they're two separate issues. One is pedestrian safety and accessibility. One is bicycling safety and accessibility. Just a thought moving forward. And thanks for all you do.
Thank you. Any other comments?
We do have somebody online.
Oh, any comments online, Kathleen?
You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello, this is Kathleen Hutchison at 1334 Montgomery Avenue. Just a couple questions about the Montgomery Avenue corridor study. You said that there would be a meeting in February. They're proposing a meeting in February for recommendations. I'm wondering if that is a Narberth meeting or a Lower Merion meeting. And if there would be, if that data from the study will be available to the public along with options for improvement to the corridor prior to that February meeting.
So that meeting will be a combination of Lower Merion and Narberth, but they will divide it up into segments. So if you wanted to just attend the Narberth segment for that meeting, you could do that. And in terms of what they will be providing in advance of the meeting, I'm actually not sure of that answer. I don't know if you guys recall.
I don't think they made it clear whether there'd be any publication before the meeting. I mean, I would hope that they would give us some sort of preliminary written report that we'd be able to share prior to the meeting. I mean, they definitely already identified, certain intersections as needing improvement, especially up by you. I think we talked about that.
Yes.
We talked about that before, that why am I drawing a blank on the street?
Wynwood.
Yeah.
That was definitely one of the potential intersection improvements that were identified.
Yeah, and that's because we're the border of Lower Merion and Lower Merion and Narberth. That's why I kind of want to know whose website I need to be watching for meetings. So I'll just continue to watch both, but I appreciate your work. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so if there's no other public comment, I will close public comment and I'll take a motion to adjourn. Second. Okay, we're adjourned at 11:14.
Yeah.
I have to call them.